Chapter 1. 3 months into her exile abroad, Penelope Penny Ainsworth returned to the country, covered in injuries. Outside the airport, Assistant Thompson was opening a car door, standing beside the vehicle. "Miss, this isn't your car." Seeing Penelope Ainsworth about to get into the car, he quickly spoke up to stop her. "It's me, I'm Penelope Ainsworth." Hearing this, Assistant Thompson glanced at the person before him, his face etched with shock. "My apologies, miss. Ainsworth, I didn't recognize you. Please, this way. Mr. Shaw has been waiting for you for a long time." Penelope Ainsworth got into the car, completely unfazed by Assistant Thompson's astonished gaze. She clutched a ring in her palm, her engagement ring from Harrison Shaw. Now, it was time to return this ring to its original owner. Penelope had just reached the door of the private room. Her hand was on the doorknob, but before she could press it down, voices from inside faintly reached her ears. "Penelope Ainsworth was exiled abroad for 3 months, right? She's back today, isn't she?" "Seems so. Thanks to Bambi Chin's brilliant idea to have her exiled. That arrogant, spoiled nature of hers needed to be toned down a bit." Bambi Chin smiled faintly. "Penelope was such a pampered heiress, used to a life of luxury. It was my idea to send her abroad. I just hope she won't hate me for it later." Hearing this, Penelope's heart sank. The diamond ring in her hand pressed a deep, red mark into her palm. Then, the voices inside continued. "What heiress is she now? Her family's bankrupt, and her parents killed themselves over their debts by jumping off a building. If she acts as spoiled as before, who's going to put up with her?" "Sigh, you're right. I just feel sorry for Harrison. Now that Penelope is back, she'll probably start clinging to Harrison again." Harrison Shaw, who had been mentioned, remained silent throughout. Only at this moment did he finally speak. "Penelope is like a limpet you can't shake off. I'm used to it." Penelope stood outside the door, her heart plummeting endlessly. "Fine," she thought. "It's time to put an end to this." She pushed open the door and walked straight to Harrison Shaw. "Harrison Shaw, let's break off our engagement." On her outstretched palm lay the engagement ring. That hand was no longer the fair, delicate hand it once was. Constant hard labor had formed calluses on all 10 fingers, and it was covered in tiny, numerous cuts. The skin was dry, dehydrated, and slightly chapped. Penelope forced a difficult smile. "I was wrong before. I took advantage of being your fiancé, knowing you loved Bambi Chin, yet I still clung to you relentlessly." As she spoke, she struggled to suppress a sob in her voice. "But now I've come to my senses. I won't appear before you again. I won't bother you anymore." Hearing this, the laughter in the private room instantly died down. Everyone exchanged shocked glances. Penelope Ainsworth, voluntarily breaking off the engagement? Had the sun risen in the west? What was even more astounding was Penelope's current appearance. After just a few months abroad, she had become terribly thin, almost skeletal. Her complexion was ashen, and she looked as if she could collapse at any moment. Her expression held an indescribable weariness, a far cry from the once proud and radiant capital's darling. If she hadn't spoken, they might not have even recognized her as Penelope Ainsworth. Her hands were visibly roughened from hard work, her knuckles slightly swollen. She definitely couldn't wear the engagement ring anymore. Penelope looked at the ring, the lingering affection in her eyes gradually fading. This ring had been with her through those arduous months abroad. She had once gone to great lengths to hide it, to prevent it from being stolen. Initially, looking at this ring was the only thing that gave her the strength to grit her teeth and survive. Later, when Penelope fell into complete despair, the ring no longer mattered, but hiding it had become a habit. When Penelope was first engaged, she'd wanted to wear the ring every single day. And now, she was telling Harrison Shaw she wanted to break it off. It wasn't just Harrison Shaw, no one in the room believed her. "Penelope, you should think this over. Don't say you want to break off the engagement in a fit of pique today, only to come crying and begging to take it back tomorrow. Has something gotten to you again? Are you playing hard to get?" Harrison Shaw's expression turned cold. "Penelope, stop playing these games of hard to get. You might not be tired of it, but I'm tired of hearing it." Penelope gave a bitter smile. "It's true, I used many tactics to get your attention before. You must have found it annoying. I'm sorry. But now I've truly decided to let go. I wish you and Bambi happiness." Looking at the ring on Penelope's calloused palm, Harrison Shaw's expression was unreadable, but he reached out and took it. You'd better mean what you say. Don't come begging me for this ring back in 3 days. Chapter 2. As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of laughter erupted in the private room. Penelope lowered her gaze. She knew they didn't believe her, because she truly had loved Harrison Shaw for many years. She and Harrison Shaw were childhood friends, their families well matched. From a young age, Penelope had adored this handsome childhood companion and thus had always chased after him. Their families had even arranged their engagement, but Harrison Shaw had never liked her. It wasn't until Harrison Shaw met Bambi Chin that his aversion to Penelope reached its peak. However, the Shaw family disapproved of him marrying Bambi Chin, who they saw as a mere fake Cinderella. For years, he couldn't break off the engagement, nor could he be with Bambi Chin, so they remained in the stalemate. Until the Ainsworth family went bankrupt. Harrison Shaw had wanted to immediately propose ending the engagement, but before Elder Shaw passed away, he had said that unless Penelope voluntarily broke off the engagement, Harrison Shaw shouldn't even think of broaching the subject. So, at that time, Bambi Chin had suggested exiling Penelope abroad alone for a while, hoping she would learn her lesson and perhaps even break off the engagement herself. However, now Penelope had truly, voluntarily asked to end it, and it was Harrison Shaw who refused to believe it. "Don't worry, I'll keep my word." Penelope said no more and turned to leave. The door to the private room closed again, and soon it was lively once more. "Hey, when do you think Penelope Ainsworth will regret this? Want to make a bet?" "I bet she'll regret it in 2 days and come crying and kneeling, begging Harrison to call off the annulment. I say 1 day, I say half a day, I say 3 hours. What's there to bet on if you ask me? It's best if she's serious this way. Harrison can finally be with Bambi, and no one can stand between them anymore." Hearing everyone congratulate him on finally getting rid of the limpet that was Penelope Ainsworth, Harrison Shaw should have been happy. But for some reason, he felt a subtle unease in his heart. The next day, Shangxi Group immediately released a statement about the broken engagement. "Mr. Harrison Shaw, president of our company, and Miss Penelope Ainsworth have amicably separated. After mutual agreement, their engagement is hereby terminated, effective immediately." Beneath the announcement, however, was a flood of congratulatory messages. Mr. Shaw never liked Penelope Ainsworth anyway. "We've finally reached the day of the annulment. Congratulations. Sob, are our Bambi and Mr. Shaw for real? Is the Cinderella and President story coming true? Mr. Shaw only has eyes for Bambi, right? He even broke off his engagement for her. It must be true love, that Penelope Ainsworth has been clinging to Mr. Shaw for so many years. It was obvious Mr. Shaw didn't like her, yet she still shamelessly threw herself at him. What is she if not a villainess? If I were Penelope Ainsworth, I wouldn't want to live after being dumped like that. But Penelope Ainsworth deserves it." Penelope stared at the abusive comments on her phone, silent. She had known Harrison Shaw first, she was engaged to him first, she had done nothing wrong, only loved the wrong person. She remained silent for a long time, finally consoling herself. None of this matters anymore. After the Ainsworth family went bankrupt, Penelope had been living with the Shaws. Now that the engagement was off, she should pack her things and leave. She no longer had any connection to the Shaw family. Penelope packed her few belongings. As she reached the doorway, she saw Harrison Shaw standing tall by the doorframe. He said coldly, "How long are you going to keep up this game of playing hard to get? If you move out of my house today, don't call me for help when you're stranded on the streets in the middle of the night." Penelope shook her head. "I'm not playing hard to get, and I won't ask you for help again." She knew perfectly well that asking Harrison Shaw for help was useless. When she couldn't bear it abroad, she had fantasized that he would come to save her. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, she waited day after day until all hope was extinguished in her suffering. Seeing Penelope say this, Harrison Shaw frowned deeply. "If it weren't for our Shaw family taking pity on you, where would you live if you moved out now? All your family's assets were used to pay off debts." A flush of shame crept onto Penelope's face. She held out her scarred hands. "Don't worry. I still have these 2 hands. No matter where I live, I can survive." Then she dragged her luggage past Harrison Shaw. Watching her retreating figure, Harrison Shaw's eyes darkened. A moment later, he dialed Bambi Chin's number and put it on speaker. "Bambi, move in with me. Penelope Ainsworth has moved out. I won't give her a chance to regret it." Bambi Chin's excited agreement came from the other end of the phone. Penelope, however, acted as if she hadn't heard a thing, her steps not faltering for even a moment as she continued forward. From that day on, Penelope Ainsworth never appeared before Harrison Shaw again. And Harrison Shaw, contrary to his usual behavior, began appearing everywhere with Bambi Chin. Chapter 3. Before the Ainsworth family went bankrupt, Penelope had studied fashion design and had a good understanding of haute couture and luxury brands. So not long after moving out, she quickly found a job as a sales assistant in a luxury boutique. "Bambi, see anything you like?" A familiar voice reached her ears, and Penelope's words, as she was describing a handbag, faltered. She hadn't expected to run into Harrison Shaw here. She didn't want to encounter them. Penelope deliberately tried to shrink back, but Harrison Shaw still saw her. Or perhaps it should be said, Harrison Shaw and Bambi Chin, while shopping, had spotted Penelope from afar. They had come to this store intentionally. "Penelope Ainsworth, you see an acquaintance. Aren't you going to come and serve us?" Harrison Shaw specifically requested Penelope's service. Seeing this, Manager Davis quickly nudged her. "This is Mr. Shaw. He spent a fortune on Miss Chin on their way. Here all sorts of expensive things are flowing into their home like water. I don't know how you know such an important person, but hurry up and serve him. Don't neglect Mr. Shaw." Penelope lowered her eyes and walked forward with small steps. After composing herself, she plastered a bright, professional smile on her face. "Dear customers, is there anything you like? This color really suits you. Miss, it makes your complexion look very fair." Bambi Chin's fingertips bypassed the shoes Penelope pointed to, instead choosing another black pair. "Are you saying I'm dark? That I need color to make me look fair? But I think this suits me better." Her expression was innocent. Harrison Shaw looked down, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Help her try on the shoes." "Certainly, Miss Chin. Please have a seat here." Penelope knelt on the floor, concentrating on helping Bambi Chin try on the shoes. Due to the movement, her dress, which wasn't particularly long to begin with, rode up a bit, revealing a patch of fair skin. Harrison Shaw stared at that patch of skin, his face growing even darker. "Is this how your store's sales assistants provide service?" Penelope looked bewildered. The next second, she heard Harrison Shaw say, "Penelope Ainsworth, you can't even do basic service properly. Are you really suited to work here?" As soon as Harrison Shaw spoke, Manager Davis nodded repeatedly. Yes, Mr. Shaw, you're right. She just started. I'll fire her immediately to ensure it doesn't affect your experience." Then Manager Davis called Penelope away, handed her a few large bills, and said impatiently, "Take the money and go." "What bad luck, affecting our sales." Penelope took the money, silent. She believed she had done her job very well these past few days, yet she could still lose it all with a single word from someone in power. She smiled bitterly and turned to leave. But she had barely gone downstairs when Bambi Chin blocked her path. "Penelope Ainsworth, didn't you say you wouldn't appear before Harrison again? Was today intentional?" Don't think she hadn't noticed. Ever since Harrison saw Penelope, all his attention had been on Penelope. "You couldn't have heard how good Harrison has been to me lately and gotten jealous, could you? Are you thinking of resorting to your old tricks, making a scene?" As she spoke, Bambi Chin leaned close to Penelope's ear and whispered, "Haven't you had enough of being abroad? Those things. Do you want to experience them again?" Bambi Chin's voice was like a viper hissing in Penelope's ear. Penelope's pupils quivered, and she slapped her across the face. "So, what happened abroad was indeed your doing. What deep-seated hatred do you have for me? Why would you harm me like this?" Everything she experienced abroad was like a nightmare. She would even wake up terrified from dreams about it countless times in the middle of the night. Bambi Chin's expression turned cold. She was about to slap back when suddenly, as if seeing something, her entire demeanor changed. She covered her face, her eyes welling up with tears. The next second, Harrison Shaw appeared from nowhere. He violently shoved Penelope aside and said sharply, "You really are incorrigible. If it weren't for Bambi's relatives taking you in abroad, how could you have returned to the country so smoothly? Not only are you ungrateful, but you dare to lay a hand on Bambi, believe it or not. I can make it so you can't stay anywhere in the entire capital." Penelope's eyes were red-rimmed as she looked at the familiar yet strange man before her, her heart growing colder by the second. She smiled faintly, but it was a smile uglier than tears. "It doesn't matter, Harrison Shaw. I'll always find a way to survive. If not in the capital, I can go elsewhere. Finally, she gave Bambi Chin a cold glance. Compared to me, I think you're the more pitiful one, Harrison Shaw. Do you know Bambi Chin's true colors? Do you know that Bambi's relatives abroad are ruthless criminals involved in smuggling and all sorts of evil deeds? Do you know what I went through abroad these past few months? Do you know how I escaped from their hands? Penelope's smile was utterly desolate. I'll be waiting for the moment you see Bambi Chin's true face. Her words were like drops of blood, a series of questions that made Harrison Shaw incredibly flustered. Bambi Chin silently shed tears, her face full of grievance, shaking her head. Harrison, I don't know what Miss Ainsworth is talking about. I know she doesn't like me, but I never thought she would slander me like this. After a moment of silence, Harrison Shaw made his decision. Enough, Penelope Ainsworth stopped slandering Bambi. I know her character very well. With that, Harrison Shaw left with Bambi Chin without a backward glance. Penelope stood there blankly, her feet as if rooted to the spot, her face pale, her body devoid of strength. Everything that happened abroad replayed before her eyes like a horror movie. For a moment, she was overcome with emotion. The world spun around her and she fainted. Fortunately, a kind passerby sent her to the hospital. When Penelope Ainsworth woke up again, the smell of disinfectant filled her nostrils. Miss Ainsworth, you're pregnant now. Your body can't afford to be so weak. You must take good care of yourself. Hearing Nurse Miller's words, Penelope felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Pregnant, she was pregnant? Chapter 4, it took a full 10 minutes for Penelope to fully accept this fact. She absently touched her flat stomach. There was a tiny life in here. It was just one accident, and it actually resulted in a little life. Her heart wasn't filled with much happiness at the arrival of this child, but rather, immense panic. She had clearly said they wouldn't meet again, yet she was pregnant. This had already broken their initial agreement. The image of that tall, mysterious figure appeared in Penelope's mind again, and a sense of unease stirred within her. Back when she was abroad, when countless people beat and tortured her, tore her clothes, and were about to send her to a red light district, she had almost given up. Seeing that dangerous and mysterious figure, Penelope, in a last-ditch effort, used all her strength to reach out to him, her hoarse throat crying out, "Help me! What purpose could a man have in rescuing a young, beautiful woman?" Penelope knew very well, but she had no other choice. Mr. Knight had saved her life, and she had spent a night with him. For Penelope, it was already a worthy exchange. After that night, Penelope hadn't expected this man to still be sitting by her bed, waiting for her to wake up. The fierceness in his brow from the previous night was gone, replaced by a touch of gentleness. She heard him say, "Do you want to stay by my side?" His voice, elegant as a cello, was slow and gentle, and the words he spoke carried an infinite allure. But Penelope shook her head. She didn't know this person's identity, not even his name, only that his surname was Knight. But she knew very well in her heart that even before the Ainsworth family went bankrupt, she couldn't afford to provoke such a figure, let alone now. Moreover, she didn't want to rely on a man, nor did she want to be an annoying parasite again. She never wanted to live that kind of life again, a life lived at the mercy of others' expressions, constantly anxious, afraid that others wouldn't like her. "I'm sorry, Mr. Knight, I want to leave." "All right." After that, she wandered abroad for 2 months. In those short 2 months, it was as if she had lived a whole new life. She struggled and learned in her displaced life, learning how to make a living and be frugal. She had also thought of giving up, but in the end, she gritted her teeth and persevered. She thought everything could start over, but she never imagined she would be pregnant with that man's child. After Nurse Miller changed her dressing, Penelope drifted off to sleep. Perhaps it was because she thought of Mr. Knight again that she saw him in her dreams. In the dream, Victor Knight sat in a high position, surrounded by a group of cold-faced bodyguards. He was dressed in a black suit, the ink-like color further accentuating his handsome face. Victor Knight's expression was hidden in the shadows, making it difficult to see clearly. "Penelope Ainsworth, who gave you the audacity to carry my child?" As his cold voice sounded, Penelope's soul trembled. She saw him calmly fingering the prayer beads in his hand, but the words he spoke were utterly ruthless. "Silas, drag her down. Get rid of the child in her womb too." No matter how Penelope resisted, she couldn't overcome the forceful methods of Victor Knight's subordinates. No, almost instantly, Penelope woke up from the dream with a start. Chapter 5. It turned out that the IV needle in the hand, resting on her lower abdomen, had dislodged, and the cold medicinal fluid had flowed down her arm, wetting her stomach. Penelope broke out in a cold sweat from the shock and subconsciously dialed the number etched in her memory. The phone rang a few times before it was answered. Victor Knight's voice was gentle, unlike in the dream, soft enough to soothe all panic. "It's been so long. This is the first time you've contacted me. What happened?" Penelope could even sense Mr. Knight's good mood. But she still couldn't stop panicking, breaking out in a cold sweat. She opened her mouth but found her throat too dry to make a sound. After a long while, she finally said hoarsely, "Nothing, wrong number, sorry." Then she quickly hung up the phone. Looking at the string of numbers on her phone screen, Penelope's heart was still pounding wildly. The thought of the indifferent Mr. Knight from her dream immediately made it impossible for her to calm down. Penelope pulled out the IV needle from her hand and got out of bed to find the doctor. "Doctor, I want to terminate the pregnancy." As she said this, Penelope couldn't stop trembling. Everything she experienced in the dream was too terrifying. She hardly dared to imagine such a thing happening. "Young lady, your body is very weak right now. If you terminate the pregnancy, it will cause great harm to your body, and you might never be able to have children again. You're still young, you have a long future ahead of you. This matter cannot be taken lightly. Think about it carefully." Hearing this, Penelope hesitated. She was afraid of Mr. Knight, yet she couldn't bear to part with the child in her womb. The Ainsworth family was bankrupt, and her parents, unable to bear the blow, had successively jumped to their deaths. Now, this child was the only relative in the world connected to her by blood. Penelope agonized for a long time, but still couldn't bring herself to lie on the operating table. A wild thought suddenly occurred to her. If she was just a little more careful, stayed a little further away from Mr. Knight, could she avoid being discovered and save this child? She wanted to try again. After being discharged from the hospital, Penelope returned to her dilapidated rented apartment and began to look for a new job. But this time, it didn't seem as smooth as before. No matter how many resumes she submitted, no matter how well she performed in interviews, it all ended in silence, like a stone sinking into the sea. Meanwhile, Harrison Shaw sat in his car, watching a dejected Penelope walk away, listening to Assistant Thompson's report. "Mr. Shaw, it's all arranged. No matter where Miss Ainsworth applies for a job, no one in the capital dares to hire her." Assistant Thompson looked out the window at Penelope, who was walking away with her head down, a trace of pity crossing his heart. Harrison Shaw's expression was uncharacteristically dazed. "How long has it been since Penelope and I broke off the engagement?" "Mr. Shaw, it's been a month." Hearing this answer, Harrison Shaw's expression darkened, and he murmured, "A month and she still hasn't come to me to back down." Could it be that she really intended to give up? But Penelope had chased him for so many years, why had she completely given up in just 1 month? Harrison Shaw should have been happy to be rid of this limpet, but for some reason, he wasn't. In the moment both were lost in thought, suddenly, a car sped straight towards Harrison Shaw's car. Fortunately, the driver was skilled, desperately turning the steering wheel, veering, and crashing into the guardrail on the side. The car window shattered, and the car body was slightly dented from the impact. Harrison Shaw and the others were taken to the hospital. Fortunately, their injuries weren't too severe. When he woke up, he found many people in his hospital room. All his good friends were standing to one side, and in front of them were Harrison Shaw's parents, Eleanor and Arthur Shaw. "Harrison, you're awake." Eleanor Shaw stopped wiping his cheek, her face full of joyful surprise. Chapter 6. Harrison Shaw scanned the people in the hospital room, slightly dazed. Many people were there, but Penelope Ainsworth was not. Realizing this, a pang of disappointment surprisingly struck Harrison Shaw's heart. Usually, when he was injured, Penelope Ainsworth was always the first to arrive, faster than anyone else. He couldn't help but post a picture of his injury on his social media feed. Penelope usually paid so much attention to his updates, it was impossible for her not to see it. But a long time passed, and a new wave of visitors had come and gone, yet there was still no sign of Penelope Ainsworth. At this moment, the hospital room door was suddenly pushed open. Harrison Shaw eagerly looked towards the door. When he saw Bambi Chin's figure, he felt a strange sense of disappointment. "Harrison, is your wound any better?" The smile on Bambi Chin's face faltered, then she ignored his coldness and continued. I ran into your parents outside just now, She paused, hesitating to speak. Harrison, you and Penelope Ainsworth have already broken off your engagement. Grandfather has been gone for a long time now, and he won't stop us anymore. Can we start planning our engagement? Harrison Shaw was initially hesitant, but the thought of Penelope Ainsworth suddenly made him nod with a grim face. He immediately had someone announce the joyful news of his upcoming engagement to Bambi Chin. Countless people congratulated them below the announcement. Harrison Shaw clutched his phone for a long time, but he waited in vain for even a single word from that person. The next day, Harrison Shaw appeared before Penelope Ainsworth with an invitation. The red, gold-embossed invitation looked very festive. Handing it to Penelope, he felt it was extraordinarily heavy. Bambi Chin and I are getting engaged. I'm inviting you to attend. Penelope Ainsworth stared at the red invitation, remaining silent for a long time. A slight smile tugged at Harrison Shaw's lips, thinking she could finally no longer keep up the act. Just as he was about to speak, Penelope said faintly, I won't attend your wedding. I wish you both a long and happy life together. Hearing these unexpected words, Harrison Shaw was almost furious to death. You have to come. Didn't you study fashion design before? Bambi is kind-hearted. She's planning to have you design the engagement ceremony attire to witness our happiness firsthand. If it were the old Penelope, this sentence would probably have driven her mad. She would have definitely torn the invitation to shreds and done everything in her power to stop his engagement. But now, Penelope Ainsworth merely nodded calmly. All right, I'll be there. She still had a child to raise. She couldn't find a job now, so since she could earn money from Harrison Shaw, she had no reason to refuse. Anyway, she had already given up on the man in front of her. Harrison Shaw didn't get the result he wanted. An indescribable frustration welled up inside him, a torrent of anger with nowhere to vent, and he left in a huff. Mr. Shaw, what exactly did you come here for? Assistant Thompson asked, puzzled. He didn't understand what Harrison Shaw was thinking. His actions were very contradictory. But even Harrison Shaw himself didn't understand. Yes. What on earth was he doing here the next day? Penelope Ainsworth went to the Shaw family villa to take Bambi Chin's measurements. Unsurprisingly, she was humiliated by Bambi Chin again. Penelope Ainsworth, tables turned, didn't you know? You have your day too. How is it? How does it feel to fall from a beloved heiress to a bottom-rung commoner? Bambi Chin said smugly, then took out a set of jewelry from her dressing table. Look, Harrison specially prepared this set of jewelry for me. It's handmade by a master craftsman from abroad, priceless. He said he's looking forward to seeing me wear it on our engagement day. Well, has he ever treated you this well? No matter what Bambi Chin said, Penelope Ainsworth remained expressionless, turning a deaf ear. Chapter 7, after she finished taking the measurements and was about to leave, just as she reached the doorway, she heard Bambi Chin suddenly exclaim, my diamond necklace is missing. No one is to leave this room. I need to find the thief. Penelope was stopped by the servants and herded back into the living room. Then Bambi Chin even called Harrison Shaw. Harrison, what should I do? That was a gift from you. I was supposed to wear it on our engagement day. How could I have lost it? Harrison Shaw initially didn't want to bother with such a trivial matter, but upon hearing that Penelope had come over today, he rushed home as quickly as possible and had his men search everyone present. After a short while, one of Harrison Shaw's men patted Penelope down, and his expression changed. Mr. Shaw, found it. The necklace was pulled out from Penelope's bag, and an instant, dead silence fell over the entire villa. Shock also flickered in Penelope's eyes. She wanted to explain, but upon seeing Bambi Chin's triumphant expression, she understood everything. This was a setup to frame her. She tried her best to remain calm. I remember the Shaw family has security cameras. Whether I secretly took it or someone secretly put it in my bag, the cameras will show everything clearly. Hearing this, Bambi Chin's face indeed changed. She grabbed Harrison Shaw's arm. It's just a necklace. If Miss Ainsworth wanted it, I would have given it to her. But she can't steal it, and she certainly can't steal it and then slander others for framing her. Apart from her, everyone here is my people. Isn't Miss Ainsworth implying that I deliberately framed her? Harrison, do you believe me or her? Harrison Shaw remained silent. After what felt like a long time, he stared into Penelope's stubborn eyes and said in a deep voice, "Enough, no more excuses. Men, take Penelope Ainsworth to the police station." Hearing this, Penelope felt as if she had plunged into an icy abyss. They could check the surveillance, and Bambi Chin's words were full of loopholes. Yet Harrison Shaw still chose to believe Bambi. A chill spread through her heart. Just as she was about to be escorted out, Bambi Chin's hypocritical voice came again. "Wait, Harrison, we can't send her to the police station. If she goes to the police station, her life will be ruined. Why don't we just make her kneel outside for a day as an apology? With this lesson, I'm sure she won't dare to do it again." Outside, a fierce wind was blowing and rain was pouring down. Given her current physical condition, if she knelt, who knew what kind of health problems would result? But Penelope couldn't go to the police station. She wasn't afraid of suffering, but she didn't want the child in her womb to have a mother with a criminal record. Penelope calmly glanced at Bambi Chin, then turned and walked out without a word. "Penelope Ainsworth, as long as you take back what you said before, I won't make you kneel." Just as she was about to step out of the room, Harrison Shaw suddenly called out to stop Penelope, his low tone carrying a hint of anticipation. Penelope's body stiffened slightly. She didn't understand which words Harrison Shaw was referring to for her to take back. Was it when she said she didn't like him anymore and wouldn't pester him? How could that be possible? Harrison Shaw had gotten rid of her. He should be celebrating. "I don't regret any decision I've made, and I will never take it back." With that, she pushed open the main door, knelt on both knees, and let the heavy rain drench her. Watching the stubborn figure outside the door, Harrison Shaw's eyes darkened, a torrent of anger with nowhere to vent. "Penelope Ainsworth. You've got guts after kneeling in the rain for a day." Penelope, dragging her swaying body, had just returned to her rented room when her vision went black, and she fainted. Her body was burning hot, yet she felt a chilling cold shiver through her. The baby must be okay. She struggled to open her eyes but couldn't, no matter how hard she tried. After an unknown amount of time, she felt a warm hand on her forehead, carefully dabbing alcohol to bring down her fever. She could clearly feel tears being gently wiped from the corners of her eyes. For a moment, Penelope savored this tenderness, somewhat reluctant to open her eyes. She was afraid that once she opened her eyes, this beautiful moment would disappear. Chapter 8, But Dreams Must End. As she groggily opened her eyes, Penelope smelled a faint, light scent of sandalwood. The next second, she saw an incomparably handsome face. "What nightmare were you having?" His deep, rich voice was very gentle, and Penelope felt an urge to lose herself in it. But soon, she remembered the previous dream. Why had Victor Knight suddenly appeared? Was he here to get rid of the child in her womb? Penelope subconsciously covered her lower abdomen and hurriedly sat up. "Mr. Knight, Victor Knight raised a hand to press her down. "Lie down first." How could Penelope care about resting? Panic consumed her entire being, and sweat beaded on her forehead from anxiety. "Mr. Knight, I didn't intentionally get pregnant with your child. I clearly took medication at the time. You can check the surveillance or ask the servants who were there then. I didn't play any tricks, nor did I use any schemes. It was I who had improper thoughts. I shouldn't have kept the child. I can go for the surgery right now, don't worry." Penelope was so flustered, she nearly scrambled out of bed to beg him for mercy. "Victor Knight? Don't call me Mr. Knight." Victor Knight held Penelope's agitated body still. He didn't understand why she would have such thoughts. For a fleeting moment, a question even crossed his mind. Am I that fierce? Unfortunately, Penelope couldn't give him an answer. "Penelope Ainsworth, I am a man of faith. I do not take life." Those few short words instantly calmed Penelope. Then Victor Knight's next words further reassured her. "This is my flesh and blood. I will not let you abort it. I came here just to see for myself if you are doing well." "This is the second time I've asked this question, Penelope Ainsworth. Do you want to be with me?" Victor Knight toyed with the prayer beads in his hand, his gentle expression a stark contrast to the one in her dream. He gazed at Penelope, almost melting her entirely. Whether Penelope Ainsworth was doing well or not was self-evident. Undoubtedly, his words were a huge temptation. Should she go with him? Ahead lay a comfortable gilded cage. He pula enus, he seenus, he sajaenus, he hua enus. Penelope didn't feel much reassurance. Instead, she felt immense panic. Victor Knight's status was too powerful. If he hadn't actively initiated contact with her, perhaps they would never have met. Penelope couldn't fathom what he was truly thinking. He was like an unfathomable ocean. The turbulent currents beneath the calm surface were unknowable. Even though Victor Knight said he wouldn't harm the child in her womb, she was still afraid. He said so now, but what about in the future? The future was so long. Would he really not suddenly change his mind one day? Promises were the least reliable things. Harrison Shaw had once made her promises too. Mr. Knight, I am very grateful that you saved me back then, and I am also grateful that you are willing to believe me now. But I cannot go with you. Victor Knight looked steadily at Penelope Ainsworth, the emotions in his eyes obscure and unreadable. After a long silence, he merely hemmed, left a remark about remembering to find him if she faced any difficulties, and then left with his men. The house quickly emptied, as if this group of people had never been there. On the day of Harrison Shaw and Bambi Chin's engagement, the venue was packed with guests. Harrison Shaw stood on the stage. His parents, Arthur and Alina Shaw, had urged him several times, but he showed no intention of starting. The person who should have been here had yet to arrive. He was consistently unwilling to begin the engagement ceremony. He had thought Penelope Ainsworth would surely come to disrupt it, but time ticked by, and that figure never appeared. Had she really given up on him? Harrison Shaw inexplicably began to panic, his heart pounding wildly. He stood beside Bambi Chin, looking at her in the familiar-looking dress, a sharp pain in his heart. It was as if he was hallucinating. He seemed to see the scene of his own engagement to Penelope. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but he suddenly lacked the courage to continue with this engagement ceremony. The wedding will be held another day, in front of everyone. He rushed out, leaving only his back to the crowd, abandoning Bambi Chin on the spot. Harrison Don't Go Bambi Chin, in her elaborate gown and high heels, simply couldn't keep up with Harrison Shaw's pace. Chapter 9, Penelope Ainsworth had just finished a bowl of millet porridge when there was a sudden knock on the door. Harrison Shaw had only knocked once before he somewhat regretted his impulsive action. He vaguely sensed the indescribable feelings he had for Penelope Ainsworth deep in his heart. However, it wasn't so easy for him to swallow his pride and admit his past mistakes at this moment. Just as he was hesitating, the door suddenly opened. "Aren't you getting engaged today?" Seeing the person outside, Penelope Ainsworth's face was filled with astonishment. Harrison Shaw looked at her for a long time before suppressing his anger and saying, "Today wasn't a good day. It's cancelled." Hearing this, Penelope Ainsworth just nodded without speaking. Faced with her calm reaction, Harrison Shaw lost his previous composure. He grabbed her arm. "Penelope Ainsworth, I'm getting married, aren't you angry?" Harrison Shaw's eyes were fixed intently on Penelope's face, not wanting to miss a single subtle expression. However, Penelope's expression remained unchanged from beginning to end. No love, no joy, no fluctuation, as if she were discussing the weather with a stranger. "Angry about what? I don't like you anymore." The words, "I don't like you anymore," echoed repeatedly in Harrison Shaw's mind. Finally, he completely erupted. "Why? Why don't you like me anymore? You've liked me for over a decade. Why did you change so completely after just one trip abroad? Don't you hate it the most when I'm with Bambi Chin? But why weren't you angry when I moved in with her, when I bought her jewelry, when I got engaged to her? You were completely indifferent. Penelope Ainsworth, what game are you playing?" "Stop playing," finally. Harrison Shaw's eyes were bloodshot. He grabbed her hand in surrender, his voice trembling with each word. "Bring back the old Penelope Ainsworth." "I want the old Penelope Ainsworth back," but no matter how Harrison Shaw questioned or compromised, Penelope Ainsworth just watched him quietly. After a long while, she pushed his hand away. "She can't come back. The old Penelope Ainsworth is dead. She died the day you sent her abroad." She smiled faintly, pointing to her slightly protruding belly. "Harrison Shaw, look, in my current state, how can we go back to how things were?" Harrison Shaw stepped back in disbelief, his voice trembling as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You're pregnant, whose is it?" Penelope Ainsworth laughed. "Can't you guess? I was alone on the streets of a foreign country, beggars, homeless people, anyone could trample on me. Whose do you think it would be?" Harrison Shaw's eyes stared unblinkingly at Penelope's belly, his entire being seemingly on the verge of collapse. "Bambi's relatives didn't come to pick you up." Hearing this, Penelope found it utterly ridiculous. "I told you long ago, Bambi's relatives are smugglers involved in organized crime, robbery, murder. They stop at nothing. Every day when I woke up, I didn't even know if I would see tomorrow. To avoid being violated by those people, I could only do the hardest, most tiring work, making myself smelly and dirty just to barely survive. To protect myself, I had to sleep with someone. I don't know who he was, but as long as I slept with him, I could avoid being sold to a red light district, avoid being slept with by thousands of men. It wasn't a loss for me, was it?" Penelope's words were like blood, tearing open her not yet fully healed wounds once more, displaying them before Harrison Shaw. Enough. I didn't know it would be like this." Harrison Shaw murmured, his bowed head suddenly lifting, his eyes flashing with intense agitation. "Get rid of the child. We'll start over like before, okay?" "Impossible. We can't start over anymore." Penelope Ainsworth refused without hesitation and turned to enter her apartment. But Harrison Shaw lunged forward and knocked her unconscious with a swift chop to the neck. When Penelope Ainsworth woke up again, she found herself on an operating table. Surgical instruments were laid out all around, and the room was filled with medical staff. Seeing her awake, a doctor in a white coat approached. "Miss Ainsworth, you don't need to be afraid. Mr. Shaw has arranged for the best medical team. Just sleep, and everything will be fine when you wake up." The doctor's voice echoed in her ears, and Penelope's heart gradually sank. Harrison Shaw had gone mad. He had actually forced her onto an operating table. Intending to abort her child, she struggled desperately. But the anesthetic had already taken effect, and she could barely move. As the cold scalpel descended, almost millimeters from Penelope's belly, she closed her eyes in despair. But at that very moment, all the lights in the operating room exploded. A cool, noble voice suddenly reached her ears. "My child, who dares to touch it?" Chapter 10, the chatter of the doctors and nurses ceased abruptly. The world fell instantly silent. Penelope's vision was blurred by tears, her despairing heart slowly beginning to hope again. Her child was safe. Penelope wanted to touch her belly, to confirm that her skin hadn't been cut, but her restrained hands couldn't move at all. "It's all right." Victor Knight untied Penelope's hands and feet and carefully lifted her into his arms. The heartbeat in his warm, broad chest was strong and powerful. Penelope deeply inhaled the reassuring scent of sandalwood from him. The anesthetic gradually took effect, and she slowly drifted into unconsciousness. This time, her dream was free of pain, instead filled with warmth and beauty. In the dream, a delicate, adorable child stretched out two chubby little hands, wanting Penelope to hold him. She heard the child's tender, babyish voice uttering indistinct syllables. "Mama, hold." Penelope held the child tightly in her arms, as if cherishing a treasure that had been lost and found. This beautiful dream was uninterrupted, and she slept soundly until she woke. Only then did she realize that the warm body behind her was holding her tightly, his large hand still resting on her lower abdomen, as if protecting both mother and child. Penelope's body tensed unnaturally. Apart from that one chaotic night, she had never shared a bed so intimately with a man. Such a tender moment was something she had never experienced. "Awake, get up and eat something. You must be hungry." A slightly hoarse voice sounded in Penelope's ear, and she felt her heart begin to tremble along with it. As soon as Victor Knight finished speaking, Penelope felt an emptiness in her stomach, a hollow, uncomfortable hunger. "Okay." She was about to get up, but was unexpectedly lifted by Victor Knight and propped up against the bed. Then he got out of bed and brought over a bowl of warm chicken porridge. "You're still very weak and have no strength. I'll feed you." Victor Knight's tone was gentle, but held an air of irrefutable authority. Penelope could only obediently accept being fed. Only after her body had mostly recovered did Victor Knight let Penelope leave. She hadn't expected leaving to be so easy. She had thought Victor Knight would keep her with him. "Sir, are you sure you don't want to keep Miss Ainsworth here? She would be better cared for here, and the child too." Victor Knight watched Penelope's retreating figure for a long time before shaking his head. "She is free. Arrange for people to protect her well. Don't let her get hurt again." "Yes, sir." She wouldn't stay. Victor Knight understood her stubbornness and also knew that she always lacked a sense of security in her heart. Only when she became self-reliant and independent Might they have a day when they could truly communicate their innermost thoughts? Penelope had just reached her doorstep when Harrison Shaw blocked her way. A small pile of cigarette ash lay on the ground beside his car. Harrison Shaw, uncharacteristically, held a lit cigarette in his hand but hadn't smoked it. "Who is that man? Do you know how mysterious his identity is? How did you get involved with someone like him?" Harrison Shaw gripped Penelope's hand tightly, his bloodshot eyes staring at her, his gaze profound. The strong smell of smoke from him gave Penelope a headache, and she coughed sharply a few times from the choking fumes. "Let go of me." She ruthlessly pulled her hand away and slapped Harrison Shaw across the face. After the crisp sound, a clear handprint remained on his face. Sobered up, who could he be? Of course, he's the father of the child in my belly. Hearing this, Harrison Shaw's pupils quaked, his voice filled with disbelief. "How is that possible?" Chapter 11. Penelope Ainsworth sneered. "Are you very disappointed? He's so powerful, his identity so mysterious, even the Shaw family can't easily provoke him. Am I right? If it weren't for him, the child in my belly would be gone by now. Are you very disappointed? Don't worry, with him around, the child and I will be fine." A challenging smile played on Penelope's lips. The feeling of being helpless on that hospital bed was too painful. And by what right did Harrison Shaw try to take away the life of her child? Harrison Shaw remained silent for a long time, speechless. After a while, he slowly spoke. "That man surnamed Knight is unfathomable, not a good person. You can't afford to provoke him. Don't associate with such people. I'm doing this for your own good. You're too naive, you don't understand what he truly represents. If you really want this child, I'll help you raise it. Come with me." Harrison Shaw only then realized his voice was exceptionally hoarse. He subconsciously licked his lips, his heart instantly leaping into his throat. Would she agree? She had loved him for so many years. She should agree, right? At this moment, Harrison Shaw felt that spending a lifetime with Penelope Ainsworth didn't seem as bad as he had once imagined. "No, I can support myself and my child alone." Penelope Ainsworth refused without hesitation. "If one day I truly can't go on, I will absolutely not ask you for help. Mr. Knight is the best choice. After all, I'm afraid of being thrown abroad by you again." After saying this, Penelope Ainsworth turned and went upstairs to her apartment without looking back. Harrison Shaw stood despondently in place. The car had been parked here for 3 days, and Harrison Shaw had practically stayed here for those 3 days. Passing residents were no longer surprised, merely subconsciously avoiding him. Harrison Shaw bore no resemblance to a refined young master at this moment. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. He kept gazing in the direction Penelope had left, like a puppy abandoned by its owner. Penelope's words lingered in his mind, refusing to dissipate. Harrison Shaw had never thought that one day he would no longer be Penelope's first choice. She would no longer rely on him, no longer ask him for help. Penelope's experiences abroad, just from her verbal description, were shocking enough. Harrison Shaw had never so clearly realized that Penelope Ainsworth truly didn't want him anymore. The little girl, who used to relentlessly chase after him, had finally drifted away from him. "No, impossible. Penny won't give up on me, it's Bambi. It's all Bambi's fault if she hadn't interfered. None of this would have happened to Penny," Harrison Shaw deceived himself. As if by doing so, he could escape all blame. He drove back to his villa. The moment Bambi Chin heard the familiar sound of the car engine, she quickly went out. "Harrison, you're finally back." Her tears were on the verge of falling, her fair little face tear streaked and pitiful. Normally, Harrison Shaw would have already asked her with concern what was wrong. But now, he was silent, his handsome face dark and grim, his brows tightly furrowed, a deep anger simmering in his eyes like an impending storm. Bambi Chin was momentarily frightened, stammering, "Harrison, what's wrong? These past few days. Where have you been? Our engagement party. When will it be postponed to?" Her tone was full of grievance. Chapter 12. On the day of the engagement party, Harrison Shaw had recklessly abandoned her and left, causing her to lose face completely. Countless people were speculating whether there was something wrong with their relationship. Heaven knew how upset Bambi Chin felt. As long as the marriage wasn't settled, she couldn't feel at ease for a single day. She always felt that the restless Penelope Ainsworth would cause some other accident. "Bambi Chin, what exactly do your relatives abroad do?" As soon as Harrison Shaw said this, Bambi Chin instantly fell silent. This wasn't a question, but a statement. He knew everything. Bambi Chin's heart jolted in alarm, and she hurriedly tried to prevaricate. "What's wrong? My relatives abroad just run a small restaurant. Did something happen?" Her smile was very forced. "Ha, run a restaurant? Serving human flesh, perhaps?" Harrison Shaw's face was grim. He pulled out a stack of documents and threw them at Bambi Chin's face, the sheer force of his presence almost suffocating her. The images and text on the documents entered her eyes, and the blood in Bambi Chin's entire body ran cold. I didn't know they were like that. I was just being kind." However, Bambi Chin's explanation was pale and feeble. The documents even contained records of her communication with her relatives abroad. There was almost no room for explanation. All color drained from Bambi Chin's face. Her methods weren't sophisticated, but she had gambled on Harrison Shaw's disgust for Penelope Ainsworth, betting he wouldn't investigate. Even if he did, after so long, he might not be able to find out. But she hadn't expected Harrison Shaw to truly not believe her, to actually find out. In fact, Harrison Shaw hadn't found all this information himself. Most of the textual information was written by Penelope Ainsworth, based on photos and other evidence obtained from Victor Knight. The Shaw family's reach wasn't that long. It wasn't enough to uncover those secrets abroad. But the evidence was right in front of her, and Bambi Chin slumped weakly onto the sofa. It was over. Everything was over. "How dare you treat her like that? Do you know how much she suffered abroad?" Harrison Shaw was like a madman, fiercely gripping Bambi Chin's neck, pressing her face against the stack of documents. Bambi Chin's eyes happened to land on a photograph showing the hideous faces of a group of people torturing and dismembering a victim. Large patches of sickening dark red were unbearable to look at. Bambi Chin screamed, her voice almost piercing the roof. "Ah, let me go, I was wrong, I was wrong." Bambi Chin was so terrified she couldn't control her trembling, almost instantly kneeling before Harrison Shaw to beg for mercy. Harrison Shaw remained silent for a long time, thoroughly disappointed in Bambi Chin. "The matter of Penny stealing the necklace, you framed her for that too, didn't you?" Bambi Chin trembled, not daring to speak, her head just bowed lower. But even without Bambi Chin speaking, Harrison Shaw understood. Yes, Penelope Ainsworth was once a noble young lady, possessing the pride of an heiress. How could she possibly covet someone else's necklace? Besides, with that mysterious man around, wanting any number of necklaces even rarer than this one was probably not difficult. Harrison Shaw thought with self-mockery, "Bambi Chin, I won't send you to the police station." Hearing him say this, Bambi Chin felt a slight sense of relief. She knew it. Harrison Shaw still had feelings for her. He couldn't let her go. But the next second, the words that came out of his mouth almost drove Bambi Chin to despair. Chapter 13, "I will make you wish you were dead. Make you experience everything Penny went through, one by one." With that, Harrison Shaw waved his hand, and two bodyguards seized Bambi Chin from either side, dragging her into the courtyard and forcing her to kneel on the gravel path. "No, Harrison, I'm your fiancé. Didn't you say you loved me the most? How can you do this to me?" Bambi Chin's struggles were drowned out by bucket after bucket of water thrown at her. The weather outside was beautiful, a clear, cloudless sky. Since there was no wind and rain, then they would create wind and rain. At first, it was bucket after bucket of ice-cold water splashed on her. Later, they used a hose to spray her directly. Her pleas for mercy were drowned in the sound of the water. Bambi Chin didn't even dare to open her mouth rashly, because if she did, countless splashes of water would pour into her mouth. And the taste of a large amount of ice-cold water going down her throat was not pleasant. No matter how warm the sunlight was, Bambi Chin couldn't feel it. She had only knelt for half a day before she fainted. Bambi Chin had thought that after she fainted, Harrison Shaw would soften and let her go. But he didn't. Bambi Chin woke up again in the same place where she had fainted. The sun had dried her clothes, and then the ice-cold water came again, drenching her completely. Harrison Shaw truly did what he said he would. Make Bambi Chin experience what Penelope Ainsworth had experienced. Bambi Chin knelt for an entire day, completely exhausted, her lips pale, already running a fever, and even starting to talk nonsense. But Harrison Shaw showed no mercy. This was just the beginning. What Penelope Ainsworth had endured was far more painful than this. How could Bambi Chin compare to her? The unrequited love he once sought had long since dissipated through repeated frustrations. Unbeknownst to him, Bambi Chin's place in Harrison Shaw's heart had long been surpassed by Penelope Ainsworth. Before Bambi Chin even woke up, she was sent abroad overnight. Abroad was the Knight family's territory. As soon as Bambi Chin entered Uncle Chin's territory, she was treated like one of the lambs, sold there beaten, starved, and subjected to all manner of abuse. Uncle Chin didn't care if Bambi Chin said she was his relative. So what if she was a relative? A distant relative he barely knew. How could she compare to the real gold and silver in his hands? Besides, this Bambi Chin was someone Mr. Knight himself had specifically instructed to be given special treatment. How could he possibly let her off? Abroad, Bambi Chin lacked Penelope Ainsworth's tenacious willpower and perseverance, and certainly didn't have Penelope's diligence or luck. It didn't take long before Bambi Chin couldn't endure the torture and latched onto a man, becoming his mistress. However, being a mistress wasn't so easy either. Beggars and homeless people on the street, even Uncle Chin's lowest-ranking subordinates, could bully her. That man had many mistresses and loved to abuse women. Within a few days, Bambi Chin was tortured beyond recognition and contracted a disease. This was her own choice. In fact, Bambi Chin could have been like Penelope Ainsworth, unyielding and strong, but she couldn't bear such suffering and torture, ultimately choosing to debase herself. When Harrison Shaw heard the news about Bambi Chin abroad, he wasn't surprised in the least. This woman was just like that, resorting to any means to climb up. Harrison Shaw brought the information about Bambi Chin's fate and found Penelope Ainsworth. It had only been a short while since they last met, but Penelope's belly had grown considerably. Her limbs, however, were still slender, perhaps a lingering effect of the hardships she endured abroad. Chapter 14. Harrison Shaw glanced around, but didn't see that mysterious figure. He's not by your side taking care of you. Penelope Ainsworth didn't want to engage in such meaningless conversation with Harrison Shaw, so she pretended not to hear and turned aside to avoid him. I've already given Bambi Chin the punishment she deserves. She's gone to experience everything you went through. I'm sorry, can you forgive me? Harrison Shaw's eyes were filled with guilt as he extended the hand holding the documents to block Penelope's path. As he spoke, he even took out Bambi Chin's tragic photos one by one to show Penelope. The shocking photos almost made Penelope relive her past, but instead of the anticipated satisfaction, a wave of intense nausea rose in her stomach. Penelope dry heaved and quickly slapped away the stack of documents. She was past the first trimester. She shouldn't be having morning sickness anymore. Perhaps the psychological impact of those photos was too great. After a long while, Penelope recovered. She stared steadily at Harrison Shaw. For some reason, she felt as if she had never truly known the man in front of her. You think it's all Bambi Chin's fault and you're blameless, right? No, Harrison Shaw stammered for a long time but couldn't articulate anything. Perhaps he understood he was wrong, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. Harrison Shaw, do you understand? I hate Bambi Chin, but I hate you even more. As soon as these words were spoken, Harrison Shaw's face instantly turned deathly pale. His lips moved, but he couldn't utter a single sound. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been exiled abroad at all. I just liked you. What did I do wrong? Penelope spoke wearily, her heart exhausted to the extreme. If you hated me, you could have rejected me early on, refused to let me follow you, refused to talk to me, refused to let me be near you. But you didn't. You just remained silent, yet you indulged my pursuit of you. You never actively gave me any hope, because you understood that just one glance from you, one gentle word, could win me back. By what right do you ask me to forgive you? This last sentence almost drained all of Penelope's strength. Harrison Shaw could hardly find an excuse to refute her. He was wrong. He failed to recognize his own true feelings, and he had ruthlessly trampled on Penelope's sincere heart time and time again. Harrison Shaw felt an extreme bitterness in his heart and mouth, as if his gallbladder had burst. He stood there, silent for a very, very long time before slowly uttering, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I just want to take care of you. You must be having a hard time alone. The child's father doesn't want you and the child. I can accept it. I can treat it as my own child. Penelope could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had never thought that one day Harrison Shaw would be so humbled. Had he truly, belatedly, realized that the person he truly loved was her, Penelope Ainsworth? No matter what, Penelope didn't believe it. How could someone he hadn't fallen in love with in over 20 years suddenly fall in love after just a few short months? What kind of absurd fantasy was this? Penelope was about to speak, but was interrupted by a familiar voice. A warm, large hand rested on her shoulder, pulling her into an embrace. "That won't be necessary. Knight will take care of my own. Mr. Shaw's kindness is not needed." Chapter 15. The tall, broad figure almost completely enveloped Penelope Ainsworth in his embrace. A well-tailored trench coat perfectly accentuated Victor Knight's physique. His eyes were deep, his gaze as sharp as a hawk's, and his aura was overwhelmingly powerful. Victor Knight's Mandarin had a peculiar, uniquely elegant cadence, but the words he spoke made Harrison Shaw's jealousy flare. "Mr. Knight walks a knife's edge every day. How can he possibly care for the delicate Penelope Ainsworth? You are often apart and can hardly take good care of her. Besides, does Mr. Knight really need this child of Penelope's?" Harrison Shaw wished he could interpret Victor Knight's intentions with the utmost malice. He stared fixedly at Penelope's swollen belly, regretting it more and more with every thought. Why did she have to get pregnant? Harrison Shaw was both jealous and heartbroken. He tried to soften his tone. "Penny, come with me. I'll take good care of you and treat the child as my own. I can guarantee with my life that I will treat you well for the rest of my life." As soon as these words were spoken, Victor Knight's hand on Penelope's shoulder couldn't help but tighten. Feeling his emotional fluctuation, Penelope actually felt a sliver of joy. It was as if, at this moment, he had finally drawn much closer to her. "I don't want to," Penelope spoke solemnly. Admittedly, if it were the naive young heiress Penelope Ainsworth who had experienced nothing before, hearing these words, she would have jumped for joy. Perhaps before Harrison Shaw even finished speaking, she would have eagerly agreed. But the current Penelope Ainsworth had long since given up on Harrison Shaw. She didn't need his love, which felt almost like charity, and she certainly disdained it. Hearing the satisfactory reply, a barely perceptible curve appeared on Victor Knight's lips, and the tension in his muscles eased considerably. He was certain that if Penelope had agreed to go with Harrison Shaw today, he would have absolutely kept Harrison Shaw here. He tucked away the gun holstered at his waist. "Mr. Knight. Victor, let's go." Penelope suddenly remembered Victor Knight saying last time that she should call him by his name, so she immediately corrected herself. She smiled gently at Victor Knight. Victor Knight nodded, his dark eyes filled with tenderness. "All right." He took Penelope's hand, and they went upstairs together. It was hard to imagine that a man of Victor Knight's stature would uncomplainingly follow Penelope into that dilapidated old building. Harrison Shaw watched their retreating figures, despairing to the extreme. A profound sense of powerlessness washed over him. Penelope truly no longer belonged to him. Something he had anticipated for many years had truly come to pass, and Harrison Shaw's heart ached so much it felt like it would shatter. He couldn't live without Penelope, but her eyes and heart were completely devoid of him. How cruel a thing was this? Harrison Shaw could clearly see the distrust in Penelope's eyes towards him, but what else could he do? Rip out his heart to show her. Harrison Shaw stood dejectedly downstairs all night. He saw the warm light in Penelope's small room gradually extinguish, and eventually all the lights in the building dimmed. Would they sleep together? Would Penelope kiss him? Harrison Shaw didn't even dare to imagine what might be happening in Penelope's home. Jealousy almost drowned him. Yes, they even had a child together. They had done everything intimate. A kiss, sleeping in the same bed. It was all very normal. Chapter 16, just thinking about it made Harrison Shaw's heart ache to the point of suffocation. The sun rose and set, the sky gradually whitened, and Harrison Shaw stood there, in the same spot, for an entire night. The prolonged fatigue finally overwhelmed him at this moment. Harrison Shaw fainted and fell to the ground. In his last conscious moment, he was still wondering if Penelope Ainsworth would feel sorry for him if she woke up and saw him. Penelope Ainsworth didn't see him like this. It was Assistant Thompson who came to take him to the hospital. Assistant Thompson stayed by Harrison Shaw's bedside, sighing repeatedly. Why go through all this trouble? If he knew it would come to this, why was he so cruel to Miss Ainsworth in the first place? But these words he only said to himself. Harrison Shaw had a dream. In the dream, he didn't know any Bambi Chin. He and Penelope Ainsworth married as planned, had a very cute child, and lived happily ever after. Even when he woke up, a faint, happy smile lingered on Harrison Shaw's face. But the dream ended. Ultimately, it was just a dream, an ethereal, unreal dream. Penny, Penny. Harrison Shaw stared blankly at his ring finger. In the dream, he wore a matching wedding band with Penelope. The dream was very real. He could even clearly remember the style of their wedding rings. After being discharged from the hospital, Harrison Shaw immediately went to have a pair of rings custom made. He deluded himself into thinking that in a parallel world, Penelope had truly married him and deeply loved him. Otherwise, why would he remember those rings so clearly? They were together in a parallel world. In this world, they would surely be a couple too. It was just that they faced a few more challenges and setbacks in between. Harrison Shaw didn't want to give up. As long as Penelope wasn't with Victor Knight yet, as long as they weren't married, there was still a chance for them to be together after the rings were made. Harrison Shaw caressed them, feeling that this pair of rings was very familiar. But he couldn't remember where he had seen them. He thought it must have been because that dream was too profound that he remembered them so clearly. Penelope Ainsworth found a new job as an assistant in a fashion design studio. Without Harrison Shaw's obstruction, her job search went exceptionally smoothly. Her colleagues at the studio were easy to get along with, and even though Penelope was pregnant, no one looked at her strangely. After finishing work as usual, Penelope had just stepped out of the company's main entrance when a little girl presented her with a bouquet of pink and white tulips. A sense of foreboding gradually crept into her heart. Pink and white tulips, only Harrison Shaw would send her those. Because Penelope had once mentioned in front of him that she liked pink and white tulips, and ever since then, Penelope's gifts would always be a bouquet of pink and white tulips. At first, Penelope thought Harrison Shaw cared about her. Later, she realized he was just being perfunctory, because this way, he didn't have to go to the trouble of thinking of a gift. Seeing this familiar bouquet of tulips, a feeling of annoyance rose in Penelope's heart. She had long since stopped liking tulips of this color. However, she had only taken a few steps when a vast sea of pink and white tulips came into view. Countless pink and white balloons floated up, and from the trailing ribbons hung hand-woven tulips. Penelope felt not a shred of emotion, only disgust. Chapter 17. Marry me? Penny, I will treat you well for the rest of my life, and I will never leave you. Harrison Shaw knelt on one knee, the ring box in his hand open, revealing that very pair of wedding rings. A crowd of onlookers had gradually gathered, all jeering for her to say yes. Penelope Ainsworth found it merely laughable. Harrison Shaw, were my words not clear enough? We broke off our engagement long ago, I don't like you anymore, and we have absolutely no relationship. These blunt words directly silenced Harrison Shaw. Penelope's next sentence shattered all his illusions. Besides, Harrison Shaw, have you forgotten? These were our engagement rings. We used them to break off our engagement. No, it shouldn't be like this. Harrison Shaw could hardly accept this fact. The memory of his engagement ring gradually became clear, along with Penelope's ring. All color drained from Harrison Shaw's face. He had actually forgotten what their engagement rings looked like. His subconscious mind had helped him remember, only it had appeared in his dream. How utterly ironic. The engagement rings Harrison Shaw had previously disregarded and forgotten, he had now recreated them to propose. For a moment, he didn't know how to explain. The onlookers murmured among themselves, and someone posted this scene online. Initially, countless people envied Penelope's happiness. Later, the topic gradually took a strange turn, as sharp-eyed people recognized the man as Harrison Shaw, president of Shangxi Group. Just a few months ago, Harrison Shaw had publicly announced his broken engagement with Penelope, and then announced his engagement to Bambi Chin. But on the day of the engagement party, Harrison Shaw had even fled mid-ceremony and canceled the engagement. Now, Harrison Shaw was here confessing his love and proposing to Penelope. Wasn't he treating everyone like fools? Countless people cursed Harrison Shaw for being fickle and irresponsible. Just then, Victor Knight appeared with a group of bodyguards, clearing away all the tulips, balloons, and everything else. As the sound of balloons popping filled the air, Harrison Shaw felt his heart shatter along with them. "Excuse me, Mr. Shaw, are you proposing to my wife? Are you publicly declaring yourself an enemy of mine, knight? Harrison Shaw didn't speak, only looked at Penelope with anticipation. He had never hoped so much that Penelope would stand by his side. But this time, Penelope was different from every time before. She linked her arm with Victor Knight's and smiled gently. Mr. Shaw is indeed being presumptuous. Penelope unhesitatingly affirmed Victor Knight's words. Impossible, impossible. Tears of near despair welled in Harrison Shaw's eyes. He had already turned back. Why would Penelope still choose Victor Knight? He genuinely wanted to marry her. Penelope got into Victor Knight's car and left. The ring box in Harrison Shaw's hand slipped unconsciously. The 2 imitation rings inside the box also fell out. The woman's ring eventually rolled into a crack in the sewer grate and disappeared. Harrison Shaw clutched the remaining ring tightly, so heartbroken he was speechless. In a private room at a bar, Harrison Shaw, ignoring everyone's attempts to stop him, downed bottle after bottle of alcohol. Harrison, stop drinking. That fickle woman Penelope isn't worth it. One of his friends spoke tactlessly, but was hit on the head with a bottle thrown by Harrison Shaw in the next second. Red wine trickled down his head, mixing with blood, making them almost indistinguishable. Chapter 18, Stop Talking. Mr. Shaw is upset. Several friends quickly covered the man's mouth, and one of them took him to the hospital. Harrison Shaw was in a bad mood. That person could only swallow this grievance. No matter what his friends said or tried to persuade him, Harrison Shaw remained unresponsive, his eyes vacant. But the empty bottles on the table kept increasing. Drinking like this was no solution. Charles Sheridan called Penelope Ainsworth. The moment the call connected, Harrison Shaw stopped drinking. Yes, the voice coming from the speakerphone was a man's. Charles Sheridan checked the phone number several times, confirming it was Penelope's. I'm looking for Penelope. Before he could say the name Penelope, Harrison Shaw, his eyes red, snatched the phone and slammed it violently on the floor. The phone shattered into pieces, and the call on the other end went unanswered. It's Victor Knight. These words were almost choked out of Harrison Shaw's throat. The moment Victor Knight's name was mentioned, the private room fell into an unnerving, dead silence. This name, apart from appearing in the entanglement of Harrison Shaw and Penelope Ainsworth's relationship, also appeared on a list that struck fear into everyone's hearts. Victor Knight had suddenly appeared in the capital and stirred up a storm. In just one short month, countless people had learned that this man was not to be provoked. Harrison Shaw drank even more fiercely, wishing he could get completely drunk and then die in his drunken dreams. But the more he drank, the more sober he became. The image of Penelope and Victor Knight leaving together replayed in his mind, almost becoming his nightmare. Finally, Harrison Shaw suddenly curled up in a ball, clutching his abdomen in pain. Everyone rushed him to the hospital. The diagnosis came back: alcohol poisoning. While being taken to the hospital, Harrison Shaw kept murmuring Penelope's name, his eyes moist with tears. When he finally woke up, his first words were, "Penelope, did she come?" His friends didn't know what to say. It wasn't that they hadn't tried calling Penelope again. At first, Victor Knight answered. Later, Penelope answered once, then completely blocked all of them. At that time, they had told Penelope, "Harrison is in the hospital with alcohol poisoning because of you. Please see him once, just this once, we're begging you," but Penelope remained unmoved. "Oh, the doctors and nurses at the hospital are very responsible. He and I have no relationship anymore. Please don't contact me again." Then she hung up the phone. When Harrison Shaw asked, his friends all silently shook their heads. He already knew the answer, so why did it still hurt so much to see his friends confirm it with their own eyes? Harrison Shaw was utterly heartbroken. However, on the other side, Penelope Ainsworth was on her way to the Knight family estate with Victor Knight. Penelope hadn't expected that Victor Knight, who had said they would never meet again, would appear time and time again to help her. "I am about to undertake a very dangerous mission. If it goes smoothly, I will set you free again, allowing you to return to your previous life. If it doesn't go smoothly, the child in your womb will be my only continuation of life. If possible, I hope you can go to the Knight estate. It's safe there and won't affect you." Chapter 19. Victor Knight's eyes were deep, making his inner thoughts inscrutable. But in front of Penelope Ainsworth, the unconscious quickening of his fingers turning the prayer beads subtly revealed a hint of his nervousness. In reality, even Victor Knight himself was not entirely confident about this matter. His surroundings were too dangerous. Victor Knight had countless times regretted dragging Penelope Ainsworth into this. Penelope was different from him. She was a sunflower that grew under the sun, strong and unyielding, while he was mired in an abyss, long unable to extricate himself. The Knight estate was not a good place to go. Its only advantage was safety. Victor Knight felt somewhat apprehensive. "All right, I can go to the Knight estate." Penelope Ainsworth's eyes were gentle, and a barely discernible affection for Victor Knight was hidden in her gaze. You must come back safely." After saying this, she shyly turned her head away, subconsciously hiding the coyness in her heart. Soon after, a few low chuckles echoed in the car. "I will come back safely, Mrs. Knight." At these words, a blush instantly crept up Penelope's earlobes. Agreeing to Victor Knight's request was not a difficult thing. During this time, she had witnessed his kindness and gentleness towards her. Even if not now, Penelope Ainsworth would sooner or later succumb to this tenderness. She found it simply incredible. When she had originally decided to leave Harrison Shaw, Penelope had firmly believed that she would never fall in love with anyone again. And now, her heart was stirred once more. Only this time, she would no longer stake all her hopes and love on Victor Knight alone. The Knight family estate was hidden in the city center, yet few people ever came here. The Knight family was one of the older families in the capital. In recent years, the Knight family had been too low profile, so much so that everyone had almost forgotten their existence. But this was precisely what the Knight family wanted. A tall tree catches the wind. The Knight family had been a tall tree for a very long time. Anastasia Knight, Victor's mother, was half Russian, her eyes a deep green like emeralds, mysterious and beautiful. Her features leaned more towards Chinese characteristics, but her aura kept people at a distance. "You're back. When are you getting the marriage license?" Anastasia Knight continued pruning her flowers, her actions unchanged, though her gaze lingered for a moment on Penelope's belly. "Tomorrow," Victor Knight answered simply, then led Penelope back to their room. Mother and son didn't seem particularly close, but there was a unique harmony between them. "It seems it's time to liven up the capital," Anastasia Knight said faintly. The next day, just as Victor Knight and Penelope Ainsworth's marriage certificate was freshly issued, Anastasia Knight sent out invitations to all the prominent wealthy families in the capital. They were invitations to celebrate the marriage of Victor Knight and Penelope Ainsworth. Their marriage was rushed, the wedding could be postponed, but the announcement and the warning to everyone could not. All the wealthy families in the capital needed to understand one thing. Penelope Ainsworth was the Knight family's daughter-in-law. Victor Knight's wife, Harrison Shaw, still lying in his hospital bed, also received an invitation. The gold-embossed words seared his eyes, almost driving him mad. Penelope Ainsworth and Victor Knight were married, how could they? Harrison Shaw was so angry he nearly tore the invitation in his hands. After several deep breaths, he barely managed to calm himself. Harrison Shaw paid no heed to the IV needle that had dislodged and was bleeding, his eyes fixed deadly on Victor Knight's name. He wished he could gouge out those 3 words. After a long while, an idea formed in Harrison Shaw's mind. This banquet, no one would have a good time. Penelope Ainsworth was his, Harrison Shaw's. Chapter 20, the Knight family had been dormant in the capital for a long time. Now that they suddenly made a show of themselves, many wealthy families didn't take the Knight family seriously. They merely thought the Knight family was some nouveau rich that had just squeezed into the upper echelons and didn't pay much attention to this invitation. Only a few families close to the Shaw family came, naturally, to support Harrison Shaw. On the day of the banquet, Victor Knight's mission was brought forward, and he temporarily left the capital. But Anastasia Knight's grand display did not slight Penelope Ainsworth in the least. The banquet was held in one of the Knight family's castles. In the past, it was never open to the public. Even the Shaw family had only seen it from the outside. Everyone who came to this banquet, seeing the Knight family's extravagance, felt a slight sense of relief and anticipation. The host of such a grand banquet must be incredibly distinguished. Even a simple acquaintance could bring unimaginable benefits to their families. Only Harrison Shaw's expression was somewhat sinister. So what if the banquet was well organized? The host, Victor Knight, wasn't even there. Was Penelope Ainsworth truly happy? Harrison Shaw wore a black suit, but a pink and white tulip was pinned to his breast pocket, making him look very much like a groom about to attend his wedding. In front of everyone, Anastasia Knight walked gracefully with Penelope Ainsworth on her arm, a polite smile on her face. From today onwards, Penny will be the lady of our Knight family, the mistress of our Knight household. Anastasia Knight removed the emerald bracelet from her wrist and placed it on Penelope's, showing everyone the importance she placed on Penelope. Initially, many people were somewhat dismissive, not believing the so-called Knight family was all that powerful. It wasn't until they witnessed the luxury of this banquet that they gradually fell silent. The wines casually placed at the banquet were all worth hundreds of thousands, even millions. A bottle, the decorative oil paintings, and porcelain in the castle were all treasures fit for a museum. Even the handmade wool carpet on the floor was astronomically priced. Harrison Shaw didn't care about these things. His eyes were only for Penelope Ainsworth. He crossed the crowd and walked straight towards Penelope. Is this how he treats you, abandoning you right after getting married? Does he really care about you and the child? You've seen the power and mystery of the Knight family. You can't handle it. Listen to me, Penny. Come with me. As soon as these words were spoken, the scene erupted in an uproar. Harrison Shaw was recklessly trying to snatch the bride, not even caring that Penelope was already married to Victor Knight for a moment. Everyone's gaze shifted back and forth between Harrison Shaw and Penelope Ainsworth. Mr. Shaw, what nonsense are you talking? I am Victor Knight's newlywed wife. You wouldn't be thinking of opposing the Knight family, would you? Penelope felt only annoyance towards Harrison Shaw. She didn't understand why, when they clearly had no relationship anymore, Harrison Shaw still insisted on pestering her. Her staying far away from him, wasn't that what he had once hoped for? So what if I oppose them? The Knight family might be able to rule the roost abroad, but the capital is not Knight territory. Penny, don't be foolish. That Victor Knight is ruthless and cruel. How good can your life be by his side? Harrison Shaw extended his hand, looking at Penelope with deep affection. Come with me, I will be good to you and the child. Chapter 21, Impossible, Don't be delusional. Since you've already decided to oppose the Knight family, then we have nothing more to say. Penelope Ainsworth said calmly, glancing at a nearby servant. The servant nodded, and she felt temporarily reassured. Harrison Shaw smiled sadly, but his outstretched hand remained in place. Penny, I will make you come with me. You will know that I am the one most suited for you. A group of men in black surrounded the castle, guns in hand. The other people in the castle instantly panicked, some even screaming and trying to flee, wishing they had never come to this banquet. A middle-aged man with sharp, deep-set features slowly walked in. A deep scar above his left eyebrow added to his ferocious appearance. Miss Ainsworth, allow me to introduce myself. I am Victor Knight's second uncle, Marcus Knight. A contemptuous smile played on his lips, and he twirled a gun in his fingers, clearly not taking Anastasia Knight and Penelope Ainsworth, two women, seriously. Luring the tiger out of the mountains, how's that for a trick? If Victor Knight knew his own mother, wife, and child were in my hands, he'd probably kneel before me and beg for mercy. Marcus Knight smiled as he walked up to Anastasia Knight, full of disdain. Marcus Knight, you promised me. I'm taking Penelope Ainsworth. The rest are yours to deal with. Harrison Shaw said coldly. He had already bought Marcus Knight time and helped him with his schemes. Now it was time to take Penelope away. With that, he was about to forcibly take Penelope's hand. Penelope subtly evaded Harrison Shaw's hand. Penny, what are you still hesitating about? Do you really want to go down with the Knight family? Harrison Shaw was very puzzled. He didn't understand how Penelope could love Victor Knight so much in just a few short months. Where had he gone wrong? He had been wrong before, but now he was trying to make amends. Why wouldn't Penelope give him this chance? Just then, a tall and mysterious figure appeared before everyone, attracting all eyes. Victor Knight put his arm around Penelope's shoulder and slowly spoke. Oh, how come I didn't know the Knight family was in trouble? Second uncle, long time no see. His stern face would only soften slightly when facing Penelope. However, Marcus Knight's face was now filled with panic. No, are you alive or dead? Shouldn't you be dead? Your car exploded. Impossible. He found it utterly unbelievable. How could the man who had died before his eyes that morning be here? Even Harrison Shaw's expression became somewhat unnatural. Luring the tiger out of the mountains, this strategy doesn't seem to be very effective after all. As soon as Victor Knight said this, Marcus Knight's and Harrison Shaw's faces turned deathly pale. They had lost. Victor Knight merely snapped his fingers, and the men Marcus Knight had brought instantly switched sides. The men in black surrounded Marcus Knight and Harrison Shaw. The dark muzzles of guns pointed at their heads. Marcus Knight hardly dared to breathe. Harrison Shaw, however, wasn't as afraid. "You want to take my wife? Let's see if you have the ability." A cold gun was pressed against Harrison Shaw's face. Everyone feared that a careless move, an accidental discharge, and something irreparable would happen. Yes, Victor Knight wouldn't make a move against Harrison Shaw in the capital, but that didn't mean he couldn't do anything. The Knight family's men tied Harrison Shaw up, took photos, and sent them to Arthur Shaw. Chapter 22. Arthur Shaw hadn't concerned himself with the Shaw family's affairs for many years. He never expected to have to clean up his son's mess at a time like this. He seemed to age a dozen years in an instant, bringing a portion of the family assets to ransom Harrison Shaw. "Mr. Knight, you are a magnanimous man. Please let Harrison off this once. I guarantee he will never appear before you and your wife again." Seeing his father bowing his head before Victor Knight, Harrison Shaw felt extremely indignant. Once this matter was over, the Shaw family's reputation in the capital would be completely ruined. The Knight family instantly made a name for itself in the capital. The long-dormant Knight family reappeared before everyone, more dazzling than decades ago. Everyone in the capital remembered that the head of the Knight family had a very loving wife named Penelope Ainsworth. The same Penelope Ainsworth from the bankrupt Ainsworth family of a few years ago. From this day on, in the wealthy circles of the capital, when Penelope Ainsworth was mentioned, no one would think of Harrison Shaw anymore. These two names could no longer be linked together. Seeing this result, Victor Knight was finally satisfied. Only Penelope Ainsworth didn't realize his subtle machinations. Marcus Knight, Victor's second uncle, who had been as annoying as a flea in the capital, was dealt with just like that, and the Knight family became much more peaceful. Penelope thought this incident was the danger Victor Knight had spoken of. "Since the danger has passed, can I temporarily leave the Knight family?" The opulent life at the Knight household truly made Penelope uneasy. Those few months of wandering abroad had forced her to be mindful of danger, even in times of peace. She was afraid that if she once again grew accustomed to such a wealthy lifestyle, it would be difficult to endure hardship again. The calluses on her hands were not a source of pain for the current Penelope, but a presence that reassured her. The alarm bells in Penelope's heart were already ringing. Not yet. Marcus Knight is no real threat. This was just an appetizer. As he spoke, Victor Knight's eyes deepened. "During this time, you can work online or have my men stay by your side. Once the storm passes, I will set you free." Seeing Victor Knight's somewhat grave expression, which didn't seem feigned, Penelope's heart tensed along with his. Sure enough, the next day Victor Knight disappeared. She didn't know what dangerous things he was doing. Penelope could only take care of herself and her child. She worried, and in the meantime, made some clothes for her unborn child. Penelope's belly grew larger and larger, making it unsuitable for her to go to the studio anymore. Many things were done at home. The food at the Knight household was excellent, and Penelope had been nourished to be a bit plumper and fairer, already showing glimpses of the former Ainsworth family's young lady's elegance. Penelope thought of Harrison Shaw less and less. Just when she thought Harrison Shaw was drifting further and further away from her life, she received some things. The first day, it was a jar of stars Penelope had folded for Harrison Shaw when they were children. When the stars were unfolded, her once childish wishes could still be seen. The densely written wishes on them were all related to Harrison Shaw. Penelope unhesitatingly burned them all. Wishes that had already expired had no reason to continue existing. The second day, it was a jar of stars folded by Harrison Shaw. It was obvious that the handwriting and origami were recent. Penelope didn't even open them before burning them as well. The third day, the fourth day. Every day after that, Harrison Shaw would send things over. Undoubtedly, they were all memories related to her and Harrison Shaw. The emotions he hadn't responded to in the past, he was now trying to respond to, bit by bit. But it was already too late. Chapter 23, a month passed, and Harrison Shaw was still sending things to Penelope Ainsworth. Looking at the photograph in her hand, Penelope felt a momentary daze. Was her humble love so obvious? She had chased after Harrison Shaw so ardently in the past, it turned out he knew it all along. Seeing these things, Penelope felt not a shred of emotion. She only felt sorry for her former self. Enough, Silas. From now on, don't let Harrison Shaw's things be sent in. Penelope casually tore up the photograph and then burned it. On the photograph, the brightly smiling young girl had eyes only for the cool, aloof young man in front of her. The embers burned out, leaving nothing behind. Initially, it was an accident that Harrison Shaw's things could be sent in. Logically, Silas should have intercepted them long ago. It was Penelope who still wanted to see how many more memories he could dig up. At first, she was in the mood to reminisce, to judge Harrison Shaw, but now, Penelope had no desire to even look at them. Silas was one of Victor Knight's subordinates, now placed by Penelope's side to take care of her. After receiving the order, Harrison Shaw's things could no longer be sent in. He looked at the pile of things in his room that he hadn't been able to send out, feeling extremely dejected. Had she seen these things? She must have, right? Why hadn't there been any response if she had seen them? Harrison Shaw sat dejectedly in his room, crestfallen and heartbroken. He thought that, no matter what, as long as Penelope saw those things from the past, she would surely remember the feelings between them. They had known each other for over 20 years. Victor Knight couldn't compare. Bambi Chin had already received her due punishment, and even he regretted it. Wasn't that enough? For Penelope Ainsworth, it truly wasn't enough. Harrison Shaw had only suffered for a few months. How could that compare to the many years she had suffered? Penelope pondered for a moment, then sent Harrison Shaw a message. I've thought about it for a long time. As long as you are also exiled abroad and experience what I went through, I will forgive you. Seeing this message, Harrison Shaw's heart leaped in shock. Was abroad a place for humans to stay? Harrison Shaw hardly dared to imagine. After he sent Bambi Chin to her relatives, there had been no news. Only in the first few days after sending her, Bambi Chin had sent him messages asking for help. Later, there was no news at all. Harrison Shaw still tried his best to investigate and only then learned about Bambi Chin's situation. He dared not imagine what would happen if he went. Harrison Shaw quickly called Penelope. After the call connected, he was momentarily at a loss for words. After hesitating for a long time, he managed to say, "Penny, I can agree to anything else but not this." On the other end of the line, Penelope couldn't help but sneer. "Didn't you say that as long as I could forgive you, you would do anything? Now I'm just asking you to experience what I once went through. Wasn't Bambi Chin also sent there by you? Can't you even do this? Do you really love me?" A few questions were thrown out, and all color drained from Harrison Shaw's face. He stammered, unable to speak. "No, I didn't. I'm not. Penny, those things abroad, they're really not something an ordinary person can endure. Even I can't guarantee I'd come back in one piece." As soon as these words came out, Penelope found it even more laughable. Chapter 24, You see, you said it yourself. Things abroad are not something an ordinary person can endure. Then by what right do you think that after I've experienced those things, I can still love you as if nothing happened? Penelope's words almost made Harrison Shaw want to hide his face in shame. She gave a mocking smile, then hung up the phone. Harrison Shaw stared at his phone, somewhat dazed, his heart filled with extreme bitterness. It wasn't that he didn't dare to experience it, but he still bore the responsibility of the Shaw family. If he went, what would happen to the Shaw family? If he didn't come back, what would become of the Shaw family? Harrison Shaw hit a wall everywhere with Penelope and could only numb himself with work. Under the Knight family's targeting, the Shaw family declined day by day. Even if he had the intention to salvage it, it was still on a downward slope. In the past, the Shaw family was almost the sole dominant force in the capital, with only the Ainsworth family barely able to compete. And now, the suddenly resurfaced Knight family had captured everyone's attention. To allow the Shaw family to maintain its current position, Arthur Shaw came up with a plan. That was a marriage alliance. Harrison, take a look. These are all daughters from several well-acquainted families. Choose one you think is suitable and prepare for a marriage alliance. Arthur Shaw then threw down a stack of documents, all with photos attached. Harrison Shaw's eyes were bloodshot, and his temples throbbed faintly. He hadn't had a good rest in a long time. Now, with Arthur Shaw pulling this stunt, he felt his head was about to explode with frustration. Enough, Dad. The Shaw family doesn't need a marriage alliance. Stop worrying about my affairs. He didn't even glance at the stack of documents, his eyes remaining fixed on the file in his hand. Hearing this, Arthur Shaw flew into a rage. Harrison Shaw, the current Shaw family, is not what it used to be. Penelope Ainsworth has already married someone else. What are you still hesitating about? Do you still have feelings for Penelope Ainsworth in your heart? If I had known she was such a jinx, I shouldn't have been soft-hearted and kept her. I should have let her jump off the building with her parents. Arthur Shaw was overcome with anger and didn't notice what he had said for a moment. Seeing Harrison Shaw's sharp gaze turn towards him, Arthur Shaw instantly fell silent. He belatedly realized he had let something slip, subconsciously averting his gaze and uncomfortably licking his lips. I shouldn't have agreed to let her live in our house, then so many things wouldn't have happened. This addition was somewhat feeble. Harrison Shaw had already sensed something was wrong. Dad, what exactly happened with the Ainsworth family's downfall back then? Did you have a hand in it? Harrison Shaw's heart sank endlessly, feeling increasingly uneasy. If this speculation was true, then, he didn't even dare to think about what would happen if Penelope found out. Would she hate him? She definitely would. She loved her parents so much. Arthur Shaw slightly lowered his head, then hesitated for a moment, before instantly saying righteously, "How is that possible? Our Shaw family and the Ainsworth family had such a good relationship. How could I have done anything to the Ainsworth family? When the Ainsworth family had problems, how would I know the inside story? You might as well ask Penelope Ainsworth." Arthur Shaw subconsciously evaded. "Enough, I'm here today to let you choose a marriage partner, not to talk about this nonsense. If you don't choose, I'll have your mother arrange it for you." With that, he threw down these words and left in a huff, leaving only Harrison Shaw staring blankly into the distance. Arthur Shaw's behavior just now was already very obvious, wasn't it? Chapter 25. Harrison Shaw already had a vague answer in his heart, but for some reason, he still felt very uneasy. "Assistant Thompson, investigate the Ainsworth family's bankruptcy, especially what my father did at that time." "Yes, sir." As soon as the order was given, Harrison Shaw felt extremely anxious. He somewhat regretted asking Assistant Thompson to investigate. What happened back then was already a foregone conclusion. Wouldn't it be better to pretend not to know? What if something was really found out? Could he and Penelope ever go back to how things were? During this time, Harrison Shaw deliberately ignored any news related to Penelope Ainsworth. He wanted to try hard to forget her. But he found that the more he tried to forget, the more often he thought of her. When Harrison Shaw ate, he would remember her former smile. When he worked, he would remember the little desserts she made for him. When he slept, he would recall the bedtime stories she insisted on telling him. It was at this moment that Harrison Shaw realized that when he sent those memories to Penelope, he was the one most deeply affected. He noticed the details he had once taken for granted or ignored, and he saw Penelope's love for him. And now, he was hopelessly lost in it, while she had long since withdrawn. What a painful thing this was. Not to mention, if the Ainsworth family's bankruptcy back then was related to the Shaw family, Harrison Shaw dared not imagine how much Penelope would hate him. Harrison Shaw prayed in his heart, hoping that the investigation results would have nothing to do with the Shaw family. But the more he wished against it, the more it turned out to be so. Harrison Shaw opened the investigation results, flipping through them page by page, his hands trembling uncontrollably. The Ainsworth family's bankruptcy was unrelated to the Shaw family. It was due to mismanagement by the Ainsworths, leaked company secrets, and embezzlement of public funds by senior executives. These incidents, one after another, ultimately led to bankruptcy. However, the matter of Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth jumping from the building was related to the Shaw family. Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth were both strong-willed individuals. After the company went bankrupt, they were indeed dejected for a while. But Arthur and Alina Shaw kindly offered help and companionship. Unexpectedly, Arthur Shaw at that time had ulterior motives, wanting to swallow the remaining Ainsworth family assets alone. Arthur Shaw's subordinates swapped Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth's medication, causing them to become overly emotional. Over time, they couldn't bear it and jumped from the building together. In their final moments, Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth chose to entrust Penelope to the care of the Shaw family. The Shaw family did not take good care of her. Instead, he had made her suffer. Looking at these findings, Harrison Shaw's first reaction was to destroy them. Penelope must not know about these things. Assistant Thompson, destroy all the evidence. Absolutely no one else can know? Yes, sir. Only after receiving Assistant Thompson's confirmation that the evidence was destroyed did Harrison Shaw's heart barely settle. But his heart still felt empty, without foundation. Logically, he should tell Penelope about this, but the thought of Penelope hating him for it was unbearable. It's okay, he destroyed all the evidence. Besides him and Assistant Thompson, no one else would ever know the truth of what happened back then. Penelope wouldn't know. Harrison Shaw deceived himself. Victor Knight hadn't appeared in the capital for a long time. Some people started saying he had run away. Others said he had died abroad. Without Victor Knight, the Knight family was no longer to be feared. Harrison Shaw heard this news and deliberately cornered Penelope at the hospital entrance on the day of her prenatal checkup. Penny, he still hasn't come back. Chapter 26, Harrison Shaw stared at Penelope Ainsworth's swollen belly, his eyes filled with heartache. What kind of husband is he? You are his newlywed wife, yet he abandoned you and the child, not even accompanying you to a single prenatal checkup. Is such a marriage really worth it? Penelope didn't want to talk to him much and turned to leave. She wasn't upset. She had known from the beginning that Victor Knight had an important mission and might not be back for a long time. Moreover, she was surrounded by countless Knight family members taking care of her. Anastasia Knight was also very good to her. Victor Knight's absence wasn't such an unbearable thing. Penny, let me accompany you to your prenatal checkup. I won't let you suffer the neglect of a husband's duties that he failed to fulfill. No need. Penelope didn't understand why Harrison Shaw still had to appear before her. Were the things she said back then not harsh enough? Seeing Harrison Shaw still pestering her, Penelope impatiently stopped. Mr. Shaw, I have no relationship with you. Please stop following me, or my bodyguards will show you the consequences. Penelope coldly threw down these words and entered the doctor's office. The doctor was pre-booked. Penelope was nearing her due date, so she thought that after this checkup, she would stay in the hospital. Penelope had just found her hospital room when she saw Harrison Shaw again. He stood at the end of the corridor, his expression hidden in the shadows. Penelope couldn't see clearly, so she didn't pay much attention. Victor Knight hasn't come back for so long. Something happened to him, don't you know? Harrison Shaw slowly walked over unhurriedly. I heard he was seriously injured abroad and might not make it. Are you sure you want to keep waiting for him? What if he dies? Slap. As soon as Harrison Shaw finished speaking, a crisp slapping sound echoed. Penelope slapped Harrison Shaw's face, turning his head. Enough, you said it yourself, that's hearsay. I'm a knight. Don't I know his situation better than you? Ha! Harrison Shaw chuckled lightly, touching his slapped cheek, his eyes full of self-mockery. I'll wait for the day you come back to me. The Knight family is a den of dragons and tigers. The child in your belly might be the Knight family's only heir. Can he still guarantee your safety? You know, in the capital, only the Shaw family can protect you. With that, Harrison Shaw turned and left, giving Penelope one last deep look. As soon as he left, Penelope instantly dropped her guard and turned to ask Silas beside her. Silas, what he said. Is it true, Victor Knight? Did something really happen to him? Silas remained expressionless, calmly saying, Madam, please rest assured, sir will be fine. You should take care of yourself. Seeing that the people around her couldn't give a clear answer, Penelope's heart wasn't entirely at ease. Her heart pounded wildly, with a faint sense of unease. Even though everyone around Penelope told her Victor Knight was fine, she vaguely sensed that the security around her was becoming increasingly strict. Everyone around her grew serious, as if facing a formidable enemy. But when Penelope asked, everyone just said they were worried about the child in her womb. Penelope knew she was currently just a burden. If she recklessly ran out, something bad might really happen. She obediently stayed in the hospital, undergoing daily checkups by doctors and nurses. Chapter 27, as the due date approached day by day, Penelope's heart grew increasingly flustered, as if something bad was about to happen. She could only barely console herself. It's okay, it's okay. The night before her due date, Penelope's lower abdomen throbbed with waves of pain. She knew it was time. A crowd of people surrounded her, escorting her into the delivery room. The voices of the assisting doctors and nurses tried to soothe her mood. Wave after wave of intense pain washed over her, and Penelope was almost drenched in sweat. However, at the crucial moment of delivery, an inconspicuous young nurse approached with a syringe. Just as the medicine in the syringe was about to be injected into Penelope, she realized something was wrong, but she lacked the strength to say more. "Nurse, don't." The doctors and nurses assisting with the delivery didn't notice anything amiss with the young nurse, assuming she was there to administer an anesthetic. Just as the needle was about to pierce Penelope's skin, a whizzing sound cut through the air, followed by the sound of shattering. The young nurse's syringe broke, and her hand was covered in blood. The other doctors and nurses noticed, but were not greatly affected. Their primary task was to help the pregnant woman deliver her baby. There was someone in the corner, and that person was still helping her. Learning this, Penelope's heart suddenly calmed. After a while, the baby was born smoothly a boy. Penelope instantly relaxed and fainted from exhaustion. In the corner, Victor Knight gasped heavily. He was severely injured, and just being able to return was already a feat. But at least he had witnessed the birth of his child. Victor Knight, dragging his severely injured body, took some medicine and returned to his hospital room. The matters abroad were mostly settled. Having narrowly escaped with his life, Victor Knight cherished it greatly. If it were before, Victor Knight might have just gone home regardless, not caring how severe his injuries were or when they would heal. As long as he wasn't dead, it was enough. But now, Victor Knight had Penelope in his heart and only hoped to recover sooner so he could be by her side and take good care of her. Harrison Shaw hadn't expected the entire hospital to be virtually filled with Victor Knight's men. He had known someone would try to harm Penelope. Those people hated Victor Knight to the core. With Victor Knight severely injured and his whereabouts unknown, they would naturally try to harm Penelope and prevent her child from being born safely. But Harrison Shaw was a step too late. His men couldn't be inserted, and when he arrived with his men outside the delivery room, he hadn't expected the people inside the delivery room to be the ones making a move. Victor Knight's actions were too timely. When Penelope woke up again and saw Victor Knight sleeping in the small bed beside hers, she almost couldn't control the tears welling up in her eyes. Victor Knight was a light sleeper and woke up instantly. His sharp eyes softened. "Uve de yel Penelope. How are you? Does it still hurt?" His deep voice sounded in her ear, very reassuring. Penelope shook her head. "Where's the baby?" She didn't see the baby beside her and felt extremely flustered. Could the baby have been taken away? Penelope anxiously tried to get up, tears uncontrollably streaming down her face. Victor Knight got out of bed, ignoring the tearing pain of his wounds, and held Penelope in his arms, pressing her back onto the bed. "Don't worry, the baby is fine. Mother went with Nurse Miller to get the baby checked. They'll be back soon." Chapter 28. Penelope Ainsworth clung tightly to Victor Knight, deeply inhaling the reassuring scent of sandalwood from him. Her sense of smell was acute. She detected the metallic scent of iron on him and quickly pulled back from his embrace. "You're injured?" Penelope's voice was muffled. Her eyes were filled with anxiety, and she wanted to check Victor Knight's body. Victor Knight timely stopped Penelope's restless hands. "Behave yourself, I'm fine." As he spoke, he even removed the prayer beads from his wrist and placed them in Penelope's palm. "It's just a small injury, it'll heal soon. Don't move around, your body is weak." Victor Knight's words were gentle yet somewhat firm. Penelope shyly lay back in bed, clutching the prayer beads in her hand, as if feeling the pulse of his wrist. Perhaps it was because of the child, or perhaps because they had experienced many things together. Penelope subconsciously avoided mentioning Victor Knight's previous words about setting her free. Even after both of them were discharged from the hospital with the baby, they both seemed to be evading this matter. Living in the Knight household, being with Victor Knight, was something very easy to become engrossed in. Just when Penelope finally couldn't sit still anymore and wanted to discuss future matters with Victor Knight, he placed the results of the investigation into the Ainsworth family before her. "Take a look." Actually, Victor Knight had obtained these documents long ago, almost at the same time as Harrison Shaw. But at that time, Victor Knight had deliberately asked for them to be temporarily concealed, fearing Penelope's body couldn't bear it. Now that she had given birth, and had been out of confinement for several months. Her body had mostly recovered, so Victor Knight dared to bring this matter up. Looking at those documents, Penelope was so incredulous she almost fainted. Arthur and Alina Shaw, whom she had always regarded as parents, were actually the murderers of her own parents. The bankruptcy of the Ainsworth family had actually been anticipated long ago. Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth hadn't been that sad. Penelope still remembered when the family had just gone bankrupt, her parents were discussing starting over after the company's liquidation. Mr. Ainsworth, afraid that his wife and daughter would be sad and reluctant, even said he would take them out to have fun. But she didn't know from which day onwards, Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth's emotions became increasingly wrong, more and more dejected, and occasionally very agitated, accusing each other. But when they were lucid, they would comfort Penelope, coaxing her and saying they were fine. Until the day before they jumped, Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth entrusted the remaining assets of the Ainsworth family to the Shaw family for safekeeping. At that time, they thought Penelope liked Harrison Shaw so much. The two children would eventually marry and be together, and the Shaw family would probably help take care of Penelope. But Mr. and Mrs. Ainsworth never expected Arthur Shaw to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. He swallowed all the remaining assets of the Ainsworth family and even took in many key employees from Ainsworth Inc. The Shaw family had never told Penelope any of this. She only knew that overnight, she had no parents, nothing at all, and could only live under the Shaw's roof. Seeing this, Penelope laughed self-mockingly. She had actually regarded her enemies as her parents, and had even loved the son of her enemy, so deeply just thinking about it made Penelope sick with regret. After a long while, she completely calmed down and said faintly, "Victor Knight, help me, I want to retaliate against them." "All right." Victor Knight smiled faintly, satisfied. He didn't care if Penelope was bad, he only worried that Penelope wasn't bad enough, not ruthless enough. Chapter 29, Penelope's revenge was merely an eye for an eye. Compared to Victor Knight's methods, it was almost unbelievably light. Victor Knight had someone give Arthur and Alina Shaw the same drug. Before long, they began to experience mental confusion, often becoming extremely agitated and afterwards forgetting what they had said or done during their episodes. Harrison Shaw understood. They knew. His face turned deathly pale. Victor Knight had successfully returned. Now, the entire capital was practically led by the Knight family, not to mention abroad. Victor Knight was ruthless. If he truly wanted to do something to his parents, Arthur and Alina Shaw wouldn't be able to escape. Harrison Shaw could only come to beg Penelope. "I'm sorry. I apologize on behalf of my parents. I beg you, please be merciful and let my parents off this once." For the first time, he lowered his proud head, slowly kneeling on both knees. "Whatever you want, as long as the Shaw family can give it, I can give it to you." At this moment, Harrison Shaw was much more humbled, no longer the spirited President Shaw of before. Penelope almost laughed out of anger. "Harrison Shaw, you asked me to let your parents go. Did they show any mercy when they dealt with my parents back then? Weren't my parents miserable enough? Did your family have to push us to the brink? I'm sorry, it's impossible. They should receive the punishment they deserve." After Penelope said this, it was as if all her strength had been drained. Harrison Shaw's face was ghastly pale, his lips moved, but he couldn't utter a word. His eyes were downcast, filled with infinite regret. After he left behind all the assets the Shaw family had obtained from the Ainsworth family back then, as well as some shares of Shengshi Group. Penelope looked at those papers, her heart filled only with infinite pain. She still had a soft heart. She had Victor Knight stop the medication for Arthur and Alina Shaw, only using the evidence to send Arthur Shaw to prison. Victor Knight didn't say anything. This was Penelope's choice. But in his heart, he understood that it was no longer possible between Penelope and Harrison Shaw. Victor Knight was very satisfied. With a blood feud between them, Harrison Shaw could never have any involvement with Penelope Ainsworth again, no matter what. "Penelope Ainsworth, do you still want me to set you free?" Victor Knight knew this wasn't the right time to bring this up, but he couldn't wait any longer. Penelope was stunned for a moment, then smiled helplessly. "The Knight household is very good. I like it very much." In the Knight household, Penelope was still free. She could do what she wanted without being constantly constrained by her child. She was not just a parasite attached to the Knight family, she was an indispensable part of this family. Penelope had heard that Victor Knight used to almost completely disregard his own life and death. And now he had something to care about, and also a weakness. Victor Knight pulled Penelope into his embrace. "Having you is my honor." He had committed too many sins in his life. He never thought he would have such a happy latter half of his life. Harrison Shaw attended Victor Knight and Penelope Ainsworth's wedding, dressed to the nines in a corner, yet no one paid him any attention. The capital was already Knight territory. Harrison Shaw decided to take Alina Shaw and leave the capital. A long time later, a new magnate appeared in the wealthy circles of Seaport City. Many prominent families thought of getting closer to him, preferably through marriage. But that President Shaw seemed to have a white moonlight in his heart and look down on all women. It was said that when he was drunk, he would always call out a name, "Penny, Penny."